What's the best gift you've ever gotten?
A French horn.
PlayStation 2.
The best gift I was ever given is a frame in which my best friend put in a printed copy of the first picture we have of us together.
IB diploma.
My watch for Christmas.
A stuffing made by my sister.
The greatest gift I've ever received at Christmas would be a bundle of 10 books from the Tdetsgrob series.
Doll's house.
A Nintendo DS.
Guitar.
Best gift I ever got was a camera. I really like capturing memories, not just for myself but for other people, and it's led to a lot of unexpected opportunities.
It's a family jewelry I got a few years back. It's a necklace that belonged to my grandma and my great-grandmother for her.
My favourite gift was that awesome Lego Star Wars set I got for Christmas when I was about 12 years old.
Welcome to the December episode of Psych Soc O'Clock, Wishes for a Wonderful Winter. This month we'll be trying to get you into the festive spirit by looking at winter traditions around the world, what makes the perfect gift, and how to maintain harmony during family visits. Your hosts for this month are me, Amelia Hilton,
Jaqueline,
and Leya, Kati.
A huge thank you to all of the students who gifted us with their answers. It's obvious that people value very different types of gifts. What's the best gift either of you have ever gotten?
Oh, that's such a tough call. Probably my boyfriend's present last year. He surprised me with a trip to Copenhagen in January, and I really didn't expect it.
Aww.
So we didn't actually agree to give presents to each other.
Oh no, did you get him one?
So it was really nice when he gave me the present.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
Had you got him a good one as well, or was it?
Yeah, actually I gave him a trip as well. So
It's always when you say you don't want to give each other something, you always do.
we both didn't really live up to the deal.
I mean.
What about you, Leya?
I once got Phantom of the Opera tickets by my parents and I loved it. It was amazing. It was German though, but it was amazing anyway.
What about you?
For my birthday recently, which was in October, I had just moved into university accommodation like a month before. And I was so surprised by how well people knew me because they got me such thoughtful gifts. I got this really cool make your own nut milk bag. So now I've started making my own oat milk. What are your favourite winter traditions as well?
Well, I love listening to Christmas music, especially if it's like really jazzy. That's my tradition, I guess.
What's your favourite Christmas song?
All I Want for Christmas, I guess.
I love the high note.
I love it.
Leah, what about you?
Oh, well, I love setting the Christmas pudding on fire. My nan always used to let me set the Christmas thing on fire, and it's so exciting.
How about you, Jaqueline?
My favourite tradition are advent calendars. So my mum used to make one every single year for me by herself. So it was always just the most exciting thing in the morning to get up and you get a little tree for the day, because my mum's actually still making me an advent calendar every year. And
That's amazing.
So her package should arrive in a couple of days, which I'm really excited about.
Oh, that's so good. Another thing that we do in the UK is Christmas crackers. Every Christmas dinner, you have these little cardboard tubes with tabs on the end which you can pull, and they make a cracking noise. Each person will have a Christmas cracker at their place on the table, and you cross your hands over each other and pull one with the people next to you. But I thought it would be fun to read out some of the jokes that come in Christmas crackers, because they're famous for terrible jokes. Did you guys bring any Christmas cracker jokes?
Yeah.
Who wants to go first?
How will Christmas dinner be different after Brexit? No Brussels.
That one's really good, actually.
That's actually so good. All right, get ready. Who hides in the bakery at Christmas? A mince spy.
My one is, what is the name of an invisible dinosaur? Do you think they saw us? I think I need to buy you some Christmas crackers.
Yes,
so that you
please.
Can the jokes.
Speedy studies.
In this segment, we each have a minute to summarise studies. Not only do we have a timer, we also have a cute little sound effect. Yeah, a little jingle
Love
bell.
it.
Although it's sweet now, I think it will give you nightmares after all the stress of speedy studies and trying to do it in a minute. Shall I go first?
Yeah.
3, 2, 1. Why do we eat so much at festive or family dinners? It may be to do with the people we're eating with. So a 2009 study by Coe and Pilner with 57 pairs of participants who ate a meal of pasta with friends or strangers, showed that during the meal, if you were eating with a friend, you were more likely to serve both yourself and the friend more food. And De Castro also found in 1994 that we eat more when we're distracted. So when you're having a meal with people that you really like, you tend to have engaging conversation and forget how much you're shoveling into your mouth. Also, it could be affected by the serving style, which is common at Christmas. So it's considered normal to finish your plate, or even sometimes rude not to. And Levitsky and Young found that when people were given 100%, 125%, or 150%... Oh no! Oh, okay, well... The last little bit is the more effort that you need for consumption, the less likely you are to consume more food. So if you have your food on the table, then it's right there, and you're likely to eat more. And Levitz found, for example, that when people have sweets which are wrapped, they eat less sweets than when they're unwrapped because of the effort that it takes.
Yeah.
My tip for Christmas is to try and get your family to serve food in the kitchen so that you have to do it there and then take it through. Yeah.
I'm so guilty of that. When the food is on the table, I would just continue to eat, and I'm not hungry anymore, but I will still continue because it's so tasty.
Yeah. Right, who wants to go next?
I'll give it a go.
3, 2, 1, go.
All right, I looked into the Christmas spirit and why do we get excited for Christmas. In 2015, the Danish researcher Anders Hugard and his colleagues conducted a study to detect and localize the Christmas spirit in the human brain. They invited a group of healthy participants who celebrated Christmas, as well as some participants who do not celebrate Christmas or its traditions. The participants were exposed to a series of random images or images that symbolized Christmas. For instance, Christmas dinner, Christmas trees, etc. While looking at the images, the researchers used an fMRI device to measure the participants' blood oxygen levels in the brain, which helps to figure out which brain regions are the most active when looking at the pictures. Participants filled out a survey about their Christmas traditions and associations with Christmas. The researchers found that the participants who celebrate and associate Christmas positively experienced a significant increase in brain activation in several areas in the brain. The sensory oh no, I don't have time for that. These, the brain areas that have been investigated have been previously linked with...
Keep going.
So they've been linked with experiencing spirituality, somatic senses, and recognition of facial emotion, among many other functions. So the researchers conclude that in fact there's some sort of complex Christmas network in the brain, which consists out of multiple brain areas.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
Oh, that must be such fun research to do as well.
Yeah, I actually looked into the research a little bit more, and it was in a podcast as well. So the researchers said that it was actually just kind of emerging out of their own interest. They were doing a study about depression, and then they just somewhat came up with it and conducted it in their free times. It's quite nice.
That's so cool. So I wonder if really significant holidays or events that occur every year, whether people have different networks.
Yeah, they were wondering that as well, and they said some way research should be investigated to figure out whether people have like a holiday network in the brain. What did you look into, Leah?
I looked into how Christmas lights and decorations can make us feel better.
Oh, okay.
So should I go?
Yeah, so 3, 2, 1, go.
Okay, putting up Christmas lights can make you happy in many different ways, actually. So it can create a neurological shift that can produce happiness, especially because it is a break from our everyday activities, so it gives us new signals. Decorations for Christmas can also spike dopamine, which, as we know, is a hormone that makes us feel good. So psychologist Deborah Serrani says that it is especially because the bright lights and colors have a strong effect on increasing energy levels and happiness. There's even color therapy. It's called chromotherapy. And that does exactly that. So maybe around Christmas we even get that therapy for free, which I found really cool. And the overall atmosphere of Christmas time might also make us happier. There's even an area of study to examine how environments can affect behavior. It's called neuroarchitecture. Yeah, what we also cannot forget is the role nostalgia plays during Christmas time, Serrani says. Many people connect the decorations and lights with good and comfortable memories of childhood Christmases. So the
No, keep going.
Okay. So the decorations may therefore trigger good old memories and emotions. Of course, this also works the other way, though. So if you have bad memories of Christmas, seeing the decorations might have the opposite effect. But psychologist... I don't know why I'm messing that up today. Psychologist Elizabeth Lombardo says that in that case, you can just try to make new traditions and then like good traditions, and then next year's it will make you happy again. Also, a study by Werner et al. Found that if you put up Christmas decorations, people will automatically think you're more sociable and approachable. So go put them up.
Yeah.
Also, do you guys prefer white or colored Christmas lights? I can never decide.
I mean, I think white Christmas lights, I think, are classier, but coloured ones
Yeah.
are like
More
really
Are
Christmassy.
fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You had a double speedy study. That was
Yeah.
poor form.
Sorry.
None of us managed to do it. We'll have to practice for next time.
Yes.
Oh, man.
Perfect presents.
Now we're going to move on to the section called Perfect Presents.
So, Jaqueline and Amelia, you've looked into what makes a good gift, haven't you? Because I still need some advice.
Well, you still got time.
You haven't bought anything yet?
No.
Wow, you're a risk taker.
I get so excited about Christmas gifts that I make little lists through the year of what I think my family would like.
I'm always like, oh, it's December. I should start thinking about presents.
I always let my sister decide what we're going to buy. Shout out to her.
So
Every
cool.
single year. She always makes a calendar, and I always rather want to buy something. So I was like, oh, should we do an expensive gift or should we do something homemade? So I wondered which gifts are actually perceived as better. Actually, it turns out that new and store-bought gifts are not always the best. Fox and colleagues conducted a study in 2015 to explore the so-called handmade effect. And the handmade effect is that handmade products, not necessarily products that are made by yourself, but just, for instance, a soap that's marketed as handmade, are perceived as better because they symbolically contain love.
So it doesn't even have to be made by you?
No.
Because-
Yeah, the study is just about how when you buy kind of artisan products. Yeah, so they conducted 4 different studies and found that participants perceive products marketed as handmade more positively than products described as machine-made.
That's a nice idea because it means people actually prefer things.
Interestingly, this effect does not hold up when handmade presents are gifted to someone that you don't know that well. If you give something to a rather like distant relative, apparently the effect doesn't hold up. And then finally, the researchers also explored for why gift givers prefer handmade products. So they argue that the main objective is that when you give a handmade product, you try to convey love to the recipient. And they found that the gift givers are willing to pay as much as 17% more for homemade things versus mass-produced items. Yeah, so the findings suggest that people feel that homemade items show more love, and love is what they want to express to the gift recipient.
It's all about love, guys.
What about you, Leya? You looked into some top tips as well, right?
I did. I looked into giving gifts that actually reflect yourself and how that influences the recipient's happiness, I guess. So because while many people expect that giving gifts is all about thinking the recipient's needs and wishes, some studies have provided evidence that giving gifts that reflect the gift giver can promote closeness with the giver and is actually appreciated by the recipients. So not necessarily look into the people you're giving presents to, but also to yourself, which I think is quite cute.
You don't want a gift that you could get from anyone because the point of giving a gift is to strengthen or like show that you've got a good relationship with that person. So if
True.
they're reminded of the strength of your relationship each time they use or like have the gift, then I guess that makes sense.
Agnon and colleagues in 2015 conducted 6 studies to investigate what type of gifts increase closeness between giver and recipient. And while they found evidence that giving and receiving gifts that reflect the recipient's interests causes positive reactions, they also found that feelings of closeness increase more when the gift reflects the interests, passions, or character of the gift giver.
Oh, what? So if you give a gift which reflects the person's wishes, then it's always considered a good gift, but then your relationship gets stronger.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, exactly.
So
yeah.
it's all about giving personal gifts in a sense. Then.
Definitely. And the findings were also supported by a study by Polacki and colleagues in 2015, because they found that a recipient's appreciation for a gift depends on the match between the gift and the giver. So the researchers found evidence across 4 studies that recipients appreciate gifts that reflect the giver's characteristics, regardless of giver's motivations or closeness to the recipient.
That's so interesting.
I feel like there is a limit though, because sometimes I feel like I've received gifts which the person who gave it to me would really like.
Oh, yeah.
Thoughts of what I might like. So I think that maybe it has to be something that
Yeah.
you both share.
Yeah.
I feel like it could be something like a photo album or something.
One of the nicest gifts I ever got, someone handmade me a card, like a really beautiful card, and I wasn't expecting it at all, and I still have it.
Sometimes it's not the biggest things that are the best, but just the small ones you
Yeah.
don't expect, maybe, yeah.
Yeah.
So sometimes, you know, when you talk to a friend or some of your family members and they kind of slip something in the conversation, being like, oh, I kind of want this.
Yeah. I'd never buy it for myself, but it would be great as a present.
I looked into a study that looked into whether demanded gifts are more appreciated than thoughtful gifts.
Okay, what, so like Christmas wish lists and things?
Yeah. Whether a handmade or self-made gift is more appreciated by the person can be influenced by whether they want it in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
We all know the dilemma when we give a present. We don't really know whether we should be creative or thoughtful or just kind of give them what they want. So in 2011, Gino and colleagues conducted 5 studies to explore whether gifts that have been demanded are more appreciated by the recipients. So across all studies, the researchers found evidence showing that recipients prefer gifts they asked for rather than unsolicited gifts.
Oh, that's...
Yeah.
Oh, I really like to try and be creative, but that does make sense.
Yeah.
They also gave you another top tip. So if you're really keen on getting one specific item this Christmas, then this is the tip for you. The results indicated that givers are more likely to purchase a solicited gift if a recipient requests one specific gift rather than a list of possible gifts.
Yeah, because then they have no option, because they're like, oh, well, this is the only thing that they've asked for.
So it turns out that writing a list for Santa won't increase your chances, but rather worsen your chances of getting what you want. When you give a list to someone, the person is more likely to choose something that's not on the list at all.
Oh.
Yeah. So,
that's unfortunate.
yeah, if you just give them one choice, they will buy the item, as opposed to when you give them an entire list. So people do that for their weddings. For instance, they had a study about wedding gifts, for instance. So people were less likely to actually buy, when the list was quite long, to buy items from the list.
Right.
So they would just try to be creative and get a solicited gift, a thoughtful gift, something that they thought that would be useful to the recipient, but not actually something that was on the list. So
that's really interesting. Yeah. What's the most outlandish gift that you've ever bought someone?
Last year I gave my mom it's like a doll with a really long neck, and when you like punch it, it makes like a sound like ow, like oh.
Wow.
And it's against stress. So like if you're stressed, you can just punch it. But she loves it.
Oh,
So
sounds like a Bobo doll. Oh my god, that would be such a good gift for someone who does psychology. You could get them like a little Bobo doll squeezy.
Oh
thing,
yeah.
Or like a punching bag.
That's so smart.
if I ever
I'm
need
telling
like
you.
gift inspiration, I'll just ask you.
So I looked into whether experience gifts or material gifts are considered to be better. And a study by San Francisco State University showed that although people expect life experience or experience gifts to result in better well-being for themselves, they consider material items to be a better use of money. So Dr. Thomas Glovich from Cornell University found that in the moment that the gift is received, experience and material gifts give the same overall happiness, but the overall satisfaction over a longer period of time with a material gift decreases, because maybe you get like the excitement wears off, or you get more used to using it, or you get other material things which are more exciting. But it increases over time with experience gifts, because in that you create memories which are fond and that you can look back over. And the Harris Group found that 72% of millennials now prefer spending money on experiences than on material things. So I know my friends, they like to go to concerts and they save money to like go out to nice dinners rather than buying super, super expensive clothes or that kind of thing.
Makes sense.
And Cindy Chan found experiential gifts are more effective at improving relationships because they evoke more emotions. And she uses the examples of like the fear and awe you would feel on a safari experience if you went with a friend, or the excitement of going to a concert, or even the calmness of a spa. Well, that would be a nice gift actually this year.
Yes, I need it.
And she did studies with Cassie Mogilner to see how relationships between the gift giver and the recipient changed depending on whether it was an experience or a physical gift. And she found that emotionally evocative gifts, which can still be physical, so for example a CD of a shared favourite artist or of a concert you've been to together, or even engraved jewellery, can strengthen relationships. So I guess you want to buy a gift which, like we were saying earlier, will remind the recipient of events or experiences they've had with you. So I thought that was quite nice.
I think that links quite well to the study that we talked about beforehand, how it's about like, because I feel like these personal things, they're quite then giver centered as well. Because like if you will give something, like I don't know, if you give, let's say your girlfriend a necklace engraved with your initials or something like that, it still is centered of you, but it will still make her happy. If that makes sense. So it does connect quite well.
I wonder how excitement increases if you buy experiences in the future. I didn't look into any studies in that, but like if you buy a concert that is happening, if you buy someone a concert in December which is happening in March, I wonder whether, because the experience is longer because of the sense of anticipation you feel in the lead up, whether that's perceived to be better.
I think also wouldn't the gifts kind of, well, you can give concert tickets to someone, but I think in order to actually increase the closeness with the person, you would also need to be present at the concert. Because like sometimes your parents would maybe give you and your sister a concert ticket to a concert, but they wouldn't come, and then you wouldn't necessarily feel closer to your parents, but you just feel closer to your sister because of the experience you went through together, I think. So I guess that's something to keep in mind as well.
That's a good point. Have you guys ever got an experience gift?
Well, I'm not sure if it counts as an experience, but I got like ABBA piano sheet music. So it's kind of, it's kind of something I can like, when I play it on the piano, it is quite an experience. So
Did you ever play it to the people you got it from? Did they ever get to hear you?
Yes, they did. It wasn't a perfect day, but they like sang along and stuff, so it was really fun.
Sweet.
So it was kind of an experience, I guess. How about you guys?
For my last birthday, my boyfriend organized a surprise party for me. And I always wanted to have one. I just never thought I was ever going to get one because it's not really a thing back home. No one ever does that. So I really didn't expect it.
I went once to a macaron making class with my friend because she got given that for Christmas, and we went, and it was really good fun.
But that sounds amazing. You need to teach me sometime, please.
I will try.
Psychology bake sale.
Yes.
That would be so good.
Psycho myth of the month.
So this month I looked into whether more money can make you happier. So there's a common belief that wealth is associated with more happiness, and wealthier people are relatively satisfied with their lives, but they're rarely happier than others in moment-to-moment experiences. So perhaps overall they rate their satisfaction to be greater, but in the everyday moments they're not any happier than less wealthy people. They tend to be more tense and don't spend any more time doing enjoyable activities than the average person, according to Daniel Kahneman, who's a Nobel Prize-winning psychologist. And he found that people often exaggerate in their heads how much happiness wealth could bring them. And another study by Fireball and Schroeder in 2009 found that happiness is associated with relative wealth. So if you think you are richer than the other people around you, then you're happier. But when rich people start socialising with even richer people, then they become less happy because they see themselves as less wealthy. And this leads to a pattern of individuals spending more time chasing wealth, even when they don't need to. So if someone got rich from the lottery, for example, and then started mixing with very, very rich people, they would feel less satisfied. And even though they had more than enough money to get by and be happy, they would continuously try to get as much money as the people that they're now in the social circle with. So it just really depends on your perception.
That's so interesting.
I think it's quite like philosophical in a sense as well, that you will never really be satisfied with what you have anyways, because you will always look to get more of it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Is there anything in particular that you think money could do to make you happier? That's a deep question.
It is.
I feel like university is quite good to make you realize that you don't necessarily need that much money.
Yeah, that's true.
Like that there's so many, I don't know, especially in Glasgow, I mean, it really depends on where you're from as well. But especially when you're in a city, there's so many free events that you can attend, and there's so many opportunities that, you can attend without spending any money on it.
Yeah.
And educating yourself, socializing yourself, making new friends, making new experiences. And I think that's much more important than, going to a cocktail bar every single Friday.
Yeah.
You might as well just, try to
sit around and drink with your friends rather than,
Do you think that, I feel like money, as long as you have like a base level, it's like good.
Yeah.
I think you need a certain amount of money to feel secure in that you can shelter and feed yourself. I guess you can think about it in Ekman's criteria, the seven stages of human need. Is it human needs? Human development?
Yeah, I think human needs.
Human needs.
Yeah. So you've got, is it shelter and food at the bottom, and then like self-actualization right at the top?
Yeah.
Homeward Bound.
So this next section is called Homeward Bound, and we're going to be looking at how going home for the holidays or not going home can affect your relationships with your family and how you feel. So, Jaqueline, go ahead.
So, I mean, for many of us, going back home after living independently for the first time can be super challenging. I mean, there's so many international students amongst us who will maybe have lived in their home city and will go home now for Christmas, or many of the first-year students as well. So, it can be very challenging. Not only for the children necessarily, but also for the parents. Because Teresa Hildebrand, who's director at Hofstra University, she states that parents can somehow get frozen in a time warp when, that's the way she explains it, during the school year when their child is away. And it's a bit problematic because the parents expect their child to return exactly as the way that they were when they left. However, especially when you go to university or start working somewhere else, you will meet new people, you will change a lot. And the parents often can be quite overwhelmed by when the children come back and they're just being very different from the way they used to be before. And Jeffrey Arnott, professor at the psychology department at Clark University, he directed a national poll in 2012, and he asked how to what extent keeping a active relationship with your parents throughout the semester can affect the relationship. And he found that continuous communication between the children and the parents can lead to a more harmonious relationship.
Right.
So 52% of those who participated in the survey said that they were in regular contact with their parents, so almost every day. And he found that those young adults would have a more stable relationship with your parents. So if you come home after this semester break and you realize that you've kind of feel very detached from your parents, maybe it's worthwhile to just take some time every now and then to just keep calling them and messaging them to keep in touch, so that when you meet up again, your parents will kind of know that you've changed a little bit, and they know what you've been up to throughout the semester, so that might help.
I guess it's kind of like keeping them along with the journey.
Yeah.
So they'll see each time that maybe you've changed, or they can learn about new interests that you have, rather than it being a sudden shock when you come back home.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's going to be really interesting. It's going to be the first time I go home
Oh,
since
that's
living
exciting.
Yeah, I'm worried that my room's going to feel really weird though. My room at home, because I'm
mine
so
at
used
first.
to.
It took me a while to get used to it.
Yeah, I feel like it's always like switching worlds, like kind of being a world traveler. Because like also when I'm here, I can't imagine being home. And when I'm home, I can't imagine being here. For me, it's like two totally separate things. I think it's really interesting.
Especially for you, because you're an international student, right?
Yeah.
So,
I actually looked into that a little bit more, how international students who go home, how that affects them, and also how it affects international students who cannot go home over the winter break. Because especially at the University of Glasgow here, we are really lucky to be able to connect with students from all over the world.
Well, you guys are you're both from Germany, aren't you? And I'm from England, which technically I guess
kind of international.
Yeah.
As we see here as well, everyone has a different background, a different home, and some even several homes. And we are certainly all looking forward to go home for winter break after a long and exhausting exam period, to indulge in the freedom of not having to study and some quality family time. But is it always just a positive thing? Or does going home after being away for a whole semester bring challenges with it? And how about the students who are not able to go home? How are they affected and cope with not seeing their family? All international students probably remember very well that they had a culture shock coming here, whether big or small. Living in a different country, maybe even for the first time, is a challenge. A different place, probably different language, climate, and people. It is not always easy to deal with. But we have surely all adapted to it quite well over the 3 months of uni here since September.
I've got waterproof trousers now. I wore them today.
You got it. Actually, in a study by Christopher and Thompson in 2006, however, the reverse culture shock was investigated. So the culture shock you get when you come home after a considerable time of studying abroad.
I didn't even know that was a thing.
It is,
so reverse
apparently.
culture shock.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So you might think that doesn't make sense at all. After all, your home country is the country you know best. But think about it. With being here, you have changed considerably, as Jaqueline said. You have developed a lot more than you might notice. And at home, things have probably changed as well. Like, there is the frozen time warp effect, but sometimes it's also changing. Because your family has to deal with you gone for a while. And they might have adapted to those new circumstances.
Maybe they changed your room interior design.
Oh my god, they changed my room.
No, for me it didn't happen with some of my friends. They were angry.
Yeah, I think one of my friends, her parents are renting out her room to other international students, so she's going to have to sleep in the guest room when she goes home. Yeah.
That's so sad.
I understand that though, but I mean,
One of my parents swapped my friend's bed with his sister's bed. So when he came back home, he just suddenly had like a smaller, more uncomfortable bed.
Yeah. Actually, my room was given to one of my brothers, and I have the smallest room now as well. So, coming back, thinking nothing has changed might bring a few challenges with it. So international students, therefore, might need a bit of time until they actually feel home again in their home. But what about the students who cannot go home for Christmas, the international students? So sometimes it's not possible for students to return to their home country over winter break, whether it is because traveling is too expensive or it is too long a travel for such a short time. For those of you who stay in Glasgow over winter, it might be a bit harder. In a study by Sevier et al., loneliness in international students was investigated. Of course, the most pressing reason is the lack of contact with their families, especially over winter time when love and time for family are advertised behind every corner. It's really hard to, not see your own family in that time. And also, I feel like FaceTiming is not like seeing someone in person after all, especially if it's so far away. So if you're an international student who cannot go home over the winter break, look for friends who are in the same situation, and I'm sure you will find someone who you can spend your holidays with and have a little family here until you can see them again.
Yeah,
for summer.
The effect of social media must be really hard if you can't go home as well, because
definitely,
probably on the one hand you want to feel closer to people, so you will look at their social media to see what they're doing, but then you'll also feel like you're being left out, or you'll see everyone celebrating with their families.
Yeah.
So maybe trying to limit how much you look at other people's social media would be
true. That might be
option.
an idea as well. Definitely.
And maybe try to. I had a couple of friends who were doing a year abroad. So then it's especially when you go overseas, you can't really go home, and then also especially if you're somewhere in Australia or New Zealand, it's a lot of fun, but also it's so different because it's practically summer. So they had Christmas at the beach. But even though it was nice, probably it's just good to make yourself aware, just prepare yourself. Christmas is going to be different, it's not going to be the same, but that's fine, it's just a new experience. I think that helped some of my friends to kind of cope with it a bit better.
Definitely. Just knowing that loneliness might be coming, but be ready to fight it.
I looked into the importance of having difficult conversations with your family member.
Oh, that sounds interesting.
Family members when you go home. So over festive holidays, I often end up spending a lot of very concentrated time with my family, which is lovely, but it can also lead to a few dinner table arguments. And Leonard Felder, who is an LA psychologist, found that 3/4 of us have at least one family member who manages to always annoy us.
I know who that is.
And of course, they're going to turn up sometime over the holidays. So, according to Relate, in 2015, 68% of people who responded to their survey expected to row with their family members over the Christmas holidays, and 39% said that Christmas Day was the worst for family disharmony.
Oh no!
Which in my personal experience, isn't the case, because often I think on Christmas Day at least people make quite an effort to make it a harmonious day.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well,
I feel like after the preparation, for us, my parents are always very stressed about the dinner. So it's like because we celebrate on the 24th in the evening, so until the dinner's on the table, it's stressful. People are screaming. People are getting upset about small things.
No.
Yeah. But once we're sitting, it's fine.
I remember it was maybe 2 Christmases ago, my nan was hosting Christmas lunch, but she didn't have a big enough oven to cook the turkey.
Oh.
And my brother's a chef, so he said, I'll cook the turkey and bring it over. And he cooked the turkey, and we were very late, 2 hours late, because it took a lot longer than he was expecting. So we were all shouting at each other and going, "Oh, you're gonna make everyone so late. Why did you not start cooking the turkey earlier?" He's like, "I'm a professional. I know what I'm doing. I just want it to be good. I can't serve bad turkey." And then he was driving, and I had to sit with this turkey and all the juice on my lap and try and hold it so it didn't fall. And I, like the genius I am, wore a white dress.
Oh no!
So it was fine until we got to about 5 minutes away from my nan's house, because she lives near all of these hills. And I was so angry, and I was sitting there holding this turkey, just festering in I was like, "Oh, this is going to be the worst Christmas. I can't believe I've had to do this. I've got a stupid turkey on my lap." And then he went over the hill and it spilt on my white dress. And it was just... It was the angriest I've ever been at Christmas. And then we turned up to my nan's, and I knocked on the door, and I was expecting everyone to be really huffy because we were so late. And my dad opened the door, and someone had opened a bottle of champagne in the meantime, because they were waiting, and my dad opened the door and he went, "Oh, hello!" And he was really happy, and everyone was really jolly from the champagne. So that helped calm me down a bit.
Good, yeah.
Champagne always helps.
Yeah, lucky. Aside from things like that, which are classic conflict causes, things like passive aggressiveness and ongoing sibling rivalries often cause a lot of fights. But also, there's this thing which Joe Palca describes as social allergens. So that is what happens when you spend a lot of concentrated time with someone. Some of their mannerisms, which normally you'd be able to deal with, really, really start to annoy you. And this can be things like knuckle cracking, or someone using the same phrase over and over, or telling the same bad joke. And Joe Palca says, "These small things don't cause much of a reaction at first, but lead to emotional explosions with repeated exposure." Do either of you have anything you think might be a social allergen to other people?
I feel like it's not only one, but I think the ones people get most upset about, I do always shake my leg. So I'll cross my legs and then I shake my leg. So the chair is moving, the table's moving, but I'm at the point that I don't really realize it's happening.
Yeah.
So people are always like, "Can you please stop shaking your leg?" And I'll stop for a minute and then I just continue, and it gets people so upset. It's hilarious.
What about you, Leah?
I feel like, so I have this thing, you might even realise now, I don't know why, but I can't look at people when I talk to them. It's really bad. I always look away when I talk about something, especially if it's like a deep conversation. I cannot look at people. It's really strange.
It's quite common though. I think it's quite common.
Yeah, I've heard it a couple of times, yeah.
I used to do this thing, which I've been trying to do a lot less, but I get very excited when I talk to people, and I try to predict where the conversation's going, and when I get really excited, I sometimes anticipate what someone's going to say, so I respond to what they're about to say before they say it.
I know what you mean, yeah.
Quite often, like, I get it right, but then it's really rude because I'm interrupting people.
Yeah.
But when I get really excited, I can't help it because I'm like, oh, I'm like, yeah, this happens. And so I've been trying to mentally count in my head and let the person finish before I try and predict what they're going to say.
So funny. Cute.
Sigmund Freud developed the idea of the narcissism of the small difference, which may also cause problems over family interactions. And it's the idea that it's the minor differences in people who are otherwise really, really similar that cause feelings of hostility. Chris Logan explains that family members often have a big overlap in their characteristics, but a high desire for uniqueness. So often, even though we might be really similar, we tend to focus more on the things that make us different within our families, which can cause hostility. And he has a quote, which I really liked, which was, "When we are all sitting around the same table, eating the same food, celebrating the same event, wearing the same terrible sweater, trying to justify our life choices to our parents, we might naturally focus our attention on those things that differentiate us from them." So, yeah.
Definitely true.
Are there any things that you tend to try and avoid talking about with your family members because you know it will cause conflict?
Yeah.
What kind of thing?
Like, for me, it's when I tell them, like, I'm vegetarian, they're like, oh my god, you're such an eco, how can you do that? Have you been totally brainwashed by university? I'm like, So I'd rather avoid talking to them about it.
Since I'm vegetarian since coming to uni as well.
Same.
So that's going to be interesting when I go back home.
No turkey for you this Christmas.
What about you, Jaqueline?
Yeah, I feel it's the same actually. I was vegan for a year and my dad's a very heavy meat eater. So when I got home and I was vegan over Christmas, he wouldn't have it. Like he was so upset. He was like, oh my god, you're being brainwashed. Like what's happening to you? It's so unhealthy. You'll die of like lack of minerals.
Oh god.
I always tend to avoid having political conversations with my family as well.
Definitely.
Because it's hard not to get frustrated. If you're used to everyone around you, I feel like at university you tend to make friends who have similar political opinions and you surround yourself with people who have very similar opinions to you. And then in your head, that reduces your thoughts about like, oh, well, some people might actually have different opinions and they might have legitimate reasons for that or some explanations. But because you're so used to your opinion being the norm, it's difficult to cope with other people having different ones.
That's why I actually like quite an advocate to talk to people who have dissimilar views from your own, because it makes you feel like you should always go back and re-justify why you're having certain opinions, why you're doing certain things, and sometimes talking to people who come from a very different background, because within a family, especially with like larger relative groups, they can be sometimes very different. So it can be challenging, but it also can be very satisfying, be inspired by someone else who has a very different opinion from you.
Well, I'm half American and I have quite a lot of family members that live in the States, and I call them every so often to catch up. And I called them recently, my grandparents, to ask how they were doing, and the midterm elections, which had just happened, came up. And normally I'd avoid completely talking about politics with my grandparents because we all know that we've got very different opinions and find it hard to have constructive conversations. But I thought this time, when my grandma mentioned politics, that I would try to, rather than swerving away completely from the topic, express my opinion and try and open up a conversation.
How did that go?
Well, at first it was pretty stressful and I was trying to win and convince her that my argument was right. And we were both doing that and being very defensive. But then there was a shift in the conversation, and I think it might just have been because we got fed up, but we started trying to actually understand each other's point of view rather than to win, just to get a better understanding of where the other person was coming from. And it didn't change my view in the end, having that conversation with her, but it made me understand and feel so much more empathetic to her position, because starting out I just tried to dismiss all of her arguments as like, oh, she you know, she doesn't care about the same things as me, she doesn't understand. But then when she started to explain why she reached that opinion, it didn't completely link up with the way I feel, but I really understood it. And we found, rather than like focusing on the differences between our arguments, we found so many similarities and common goals within the two different sides, which I thought it was a really amazing experience for me. And we are talking a lot more about our views in a really respectful way. And I've got a little clip of my grandparents talking to tell you.
I want to hear.
To me, it went well because we both gleaned some things that we agreed on and some things we didn't agree on.
Although I found it quite hard at first was when I made more of an effort to understand your point of view rather than just trying to convince you of mine.
There's an old saying that goes along the lines that you cannot judge a person or what that person's opinion is about things in particular unless you're able to walk in their shoes. You're being increasingly sensitive toward where the other person's coming from. Now, we're older Americans. We've been here a while. We have seen changes in our country which have been destructive to places that we love. We have opinions that have been based upon the fact that we live it.
And you both made a really good point, which I think I needed to hear, that it's easy for someone young like me who's studying these things theoretically to think about them in a completely theoretical view, whereas it's important for everyone, including me, and for you guys as well, I think, to understand the lived-in consequences of these issues so that we can better understand why people have different opinions on them.
And I think it's good for people young like yourself on the cutting edge of thinking in a major university. You peel back the skin of old issues. We are able to see maybe deeper into the issue at hand than we may have realized before. See, it's always important for people, it's important for us who have been around a long time, to be willing to listen.
Right.
In turn, need to listen to each other. I mean, we being older, we have things that we can share with you in our life's experience. And at the same time, you have a different perspective where the thinking is with regard to contemporary society.
Well, thank you very much for talking to me. And
thank you.
Well, it's a privilege. Thank you for including us.
It illustrates quite well how people often tend in difficult conversations not to actually listen to someone else. You're just thinking about, you're preparing your next step, your next argument. You're trying to think about your response and instead of actually sitting down and listening to the other person. And I think that's maybe one of the top tips one of my personal top tips for Christmas discussions, to actually sit down and listen to people instead of just being very defensive and trying to convince others.
Well, I looked at some studies into it actually. So there's a 2017 Stress in America survey found that 27% of adults strongly or somewhat agree that the US political climate has caused strain between them and their family members. And a 2008 study by Tabor, Can and Kuksova concerning the motivated processing of political arguments and disconfirmation biases found that, and this is a quote, people seem unable to ignore their prior beliefs when processing arguments or evidence. So at the start of our conversation, that was definitely true, because I was thinking about everything that she said as an attack on my view and couldn't consider that I should start from a neutral place. And another quote is, "This bias is moderated by political sophistication and strength of prior attitude, regardless of the argument type." So even if you're not having a quote-unquote political conversation, as in it actually being about politics, the strength of your attitude going into a conversation increases how difficult it is for you to come from a neutral standpoint. Yeah, and basically as the strength of our own opinion increases, the less able we are to see the potential credibility in any difference of opinion, no matter what the conversation is.
I mean, it does make sense because to a certain extent, some of your opinions are very crucial to your self-concept and your self-identity. So the more your opinion also is part of your self-identity, the more defensive you will be about it and the less tolerant you will be to accept other opinions on that matter. Yeah.
That's why some people find it difficult to debate about arguments they're really, really passionate about, I think.
And that's me as well, because especially if it doesn't really make sense to others, if it's kind of, you know, like an inside thing, I find it really hard to communicate it. So sometimes I'd rather avoid some conversations. Yeah.
A common problem is the inability to see our own bias, even though we can easily see the bias and ignorance in other people's views. And our minds actually try to defend our views from threat. So we bolster our opinions and discredit those of others in a subconscious way. So the best way to try and get over that is to try to be empathetic and really make an effort to understand why the other person holds their view. And in turn, that can help you understand why you hold yours. And the APA, the American Psychological Association, actually have tips about how to have productive discussions. So the first one is find areas where you agree, so that you're not seeing the other person or the other side as, even the language I'm using now, like, you shouldn't see them as enemies, or you should try not to see each other as being on opposite sides. And if you start from finding where you agree, then that can make you more empathetic and more willing to listen to the other view. Be open and kind, so avoid polarising language and personal attacks. And remember that you are having the conversation with a real person with their own feelings and reasons and experiences. Keep calm when tensions rise. Not only will you be able to articulate your opinion and discuss better, but it's just not worth getting really upset and angry about, because that will upset you and make it harder to have.
My mom always says the person that starts screaming lost the argument. And I feel like that's a very valuable tip, actually.
They also say have realistic conversation goals. So rather than trying to convince someone that your opinion is right and the best, maybe go into it thinking, I want to understand their argument and I want them to be able to understand mine. And productive discussions can actually be eye-opening bonding experiences with your family, like the way I found it was with my grandparents, and can help everyone better understand each other's points of view. So we looked into other ways other than having difficult discussions, which don't have to be difficult if you go into it with the right attitude. Then it may not be the easiest conversation you have, but it can be really worthwhile to stick with it. What are some other ways that you can bond over Christmas without wanting to stab your family with a carving knife? So I looked at creating a common goal. So that can be something like decorating the Christmas tree, which I do with my brother every year, or baking a festive dish. So we like to make gingerbread houses. And go on walks. Sharing goals and intentions with others supports establishment of social bonds, according to Hommel et al. In 2009 and Iani et al. In 2011. And in humans, oxytocin can be released when individuals take part in social interactions that are not linked to maternal nurturing.
I was just thinking about that.
Because a lot of oxytocin research has looked into how mothers release oxytocin when they're socialising with their children, but it can also happen when you're just having a nice
that's amazing
thing.
It's really interesting.
Did you see anything, Leya?
I did. I looked into going on trips, because going on trips can actually help any close relationship become deeper and better, whether it's familiar or even romantic. In a study by Leya and Block, it was found that one of the most important reasons is that you make memories together. These good memories immediately connect to the person. So if you have good memories, you connect the good feeling to the person. And then sharing those and recalling them after a while can then help make a family more bound together. So if you want to go on a trip this winter, go for it, because traveling is a great way to bond with your family over Christmas break as well.
Yeah, that's definitely something that I notice when my family gets together and when we end up talking about old holidays.
Yeah.
The atmosphere changes and it's so nice and warm and...
Definitely. And you connect the people actually with like the good emotion and like with the intimate emotion.
Yeah.
It doesn't always have to be expensive. So like trips can be very expensive and difficult to plan, and everyone has to be available. So there's also small things that you can do in order to bond together with your family. Some research has suggested that doing something adventurous or scary together can bond you with people. So I looked into something very simple, into watching horror movies with your family.
Oh.
Maybe don't do it with your grandparents if they have a weak heart. But like with your parents and maybe your siblings. Current research suggests that due to the way that our bodies and our minds process physiological and neural responses and emotions, movies that evoke strong responses in viewers are great for creating strong emotional experiences, even if they're seemingly unrelated to the film themselves. These scenes are designed to make us scared. So there are jumps and creepy images and like slaughtering going on. So there's a lot of emotional experience because you will maybe empathize with people or you will just laugh over it. So you will get a quite strong emotions. While the movie's going on, you will feel a heightened sense of arousal. But also, once you stop watching the movie, the arousal responses can linger. So meaning that once you get out of the theater or once you turn off the TV, the effects of the arousal might stick around. And without the horror movie being the immediate explanation for your emotions, the brain might end up finding the most logical explanation for that arousal is because you feel attracted or bonded to another person. So originally this was called the snuggling theory. It was discovered in the 1970s. Cute. And is about sexual attraction, but also current research suggests that you can also feel attraction to some of your family's members in a non-sexual way.
Yeah, I actually looked into something that I personally found really interesting. And it's such a simple thing, but you wouldn't think of it. Literally just sharing a space, like a physical space, can in many cases help deepen and improve a family relationship. Or, again, in this case, a romantic relationship as well, if you're looking for that this Christmas. And this is called the Shared Space Factor by author Ori Braffman. The reason is simple. If you share a space with someone, you're close to them and you immediately feel more comfortable around them because of the physical closure. And additionally, there's the factor of intimacy. This might not even happen consciously, but it makes you feel connected in some way. That also works with random people, by the way. Because imagine you're in an elevator with someone. It feels like you're part of a specific group just being in an elevator with someone because it's such a small space.
Quite a lot of romantic relationships start in that way as well, if you think about it. Like people who share tube journeys, for example, in London, or metro journeys, or people who frequently come into contact with each other, like on the lift on the way up to work at the same time. I think that can make you feel familiar with someone even if you don't talk to them.
Yeah,
true.
That's quite interesting.
Yeah.
I also looked into how asking personal questions can create a sense of bonding. So Stony Brook University psychologist Arthur Aarons and his collaborators developed a set of 36 questions which are thought to increase intimacy between people. And this was picked up in the media as psychological research often is, and slightly misrepresented. And it was called 36 Questions Which Will Make Two Strangers Fall in Love, which is exaggerating the research a little bit. Some of these questions are incredibly personal.
Oh, like what?
Like, how do you feel about your relationship with your mother?
Oh, that is quite personal.
Yeah, so we thought we'd choose some slightly less personal ones to discuss.
Yes.
So that we can feel like part of the Psychology Society family together. So, Leah, what was your favourite one?
My favourite one was, would you like to be famous? And if yes, in what way?
Oh,
tough one.
I think I would do a Hannah Montana. So I would like to have the option to have fame, but then also dip out of it if I can. What about you?
I don't really want to be famous. It's more like so my goal would be to achieve something and then just be acknowledged by that. It doesn't need to be like just if it's something within the community, just to be acknowledged within the community for what I've did, but not necessarily famous.
Yeah, true.
That's really nice though.
Yeah. My favourite one was, if you could wake up tomorrow having gained one quality or ability, what would it be?
I think I would want to be able to fly. I always have dreams about flying, and it's the best. Yes.
I don't know. What about you, Amelia?
I think I'd like the ability to do multiple things at once, because I find I never have enough time for all the things I want to do. But if I could get back some time in the day, then I think that would be really good. What about you?
I feel like I'd like to have a very, like, an unfailable memory. Yeah. Because oftentimes I like to read and I like to find out new things, but oftentimes I will just forget what I've learned, which can be quite frustrating. Like, I don't know, if you informed yourself about an interesting topic and then it comes up in a conversation, you're like, oh yeah, I've read about this, but it was 2 years ago, so I can't actually pick up the conversation now. So I just, like, love to actually remember the things that I study and that I looked into the question number 34. So your house containing everything you own catches fire. After saving your loved ones, obviously that comes first, I hope, and pets, you have time to safely make a final dash to save one final item. What would it be and why?
I feel like something like a laptop you can replace. Oh, it needs to be something emotional, doesn't it? With a real emotional connection.
I love to write, so I have some manuscripts of novels. I think I'd save those.
I was actually thinking about my hard drive. I was like, I don't care so much about the laptop, but I think it's just because my laptop is broken now, and I'm thinking so much about my hard drive that I'm like, oh yeah.
I think I'd run and get all the printed photos that my family have, because we haven't been smart enough to convert them into digital copies, so they only exist in the physical thing. We hope hearing our answers has made you feel like part of the Psych Soc O'Clock family, and that you can use some of what we've discussed to have a harmonious, joy-filled winter holiday, whatever and wherever you're celebrating. Next month, we'll be taking inspiration from New Year's resolutions, and we'll be looking at how to shake off bad habits and stick with new ones. Stay posted for the next campus chat question. I'm working on it so I can get some really good answers. And the next researcher interview, which should be out soon. Find us on SoundCloud and YouTube at Psych Soc O'Clock. I'm sorry about the other formats, I'm working on it. The Apple minions have not liked the most recent episodes of Psych Soc O'Clock, so they haven't gone up, but I'll convince them and ask them to engage in their Christmas spirit.
Yes.
We've also got an email. The email is psychsococlock@gmail.com. And we got our first email the other day. I was so excited. It was from Dan. Shout out to Dan. He asked if we could discuss SAD, which we didn't get time to today, but maybe in January we can try and discuss it. So I hope you two have an absolutely wonderful winter holiday.
Oh, thank you. You as well.
Thank you for being on the podcast.
Thank you for having us.
That's all from us for now.
Happy holidays and see you next year.
This episode was recorded in the University of Glasgow School of Critical Studies. It was created by Amelia Hilton in association with the Glasgow University Psychology Society. It was written and recorded by Amelia Hilton, Leya, Kati and Jaqueline. It was produced by Amelia Hilton and edited by Jack Harding, with original music by Jack Harding. Contact Psych Soc O'Clock at our email address, psychsococlock@gmail.com, and find us on YouTube and on SoundCloud under Psych Soc O'Clock. Wishes for a wonderful winter. See you next month.
I don't want a lot for Christmas. There is just one thing I need, and I. Oh, we all just
Very well. That's good. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. Or we can do a little "All I Want for Christmas Is You."
Okay. Yeah. 1, 2, 3, 4.
All I want for Christmas is you.